What is going on, guys? This is the 5 Bat Pass podcast with me, Suddy. This is Sham, and we're talking about the fixtures of the weekend, Premier League fixtures of the weekend, Sham. As usual, man, there's always a few surprises, but I think maybe contrary to our prediction, which I think our prediction went against the grain, not a surprise. Everton beat Liverpool. Perhaps the manner in which they beat them was a bit surprising, getting that early goal from Richarlison. But look, Liverpool. You could argue with this team, not so much the club, in a full-blown crisis. Henderson limped off injured. Who knows who's playing centre back for them next? Kabach just doesn't look the part. And I said this before. I think it was a questionable buy getting Kabach coming from Schalke, a Schalke team that's not doing well. You're not going to go buy, I don't know, Phil Jagielka to try and fill in for a team in Bayern, for a position in Bayern, for example. It's the same kind of concept, you know. Walk us through what you thought.
I was just going to say Schalke have nearly set the Bundesliga record for most games without winning. And so Kabach is part of that defense. And he's a young fellow, Kabach, so he's also had to get used to playing in a foreign country. And he just seems mentally half a step off. He doesn't seem to react to situations quite as quickly as what is needed. So he's sort of playing catch up a bit in terms of where he needs to move physically. The first goal was quite funny because the ball was sort of yo-yoing around in the area. There's about 5 sort of headers that needed to be won by various players. But as soon as Rodriguez got his foot on it, he just played a beautiful ball for Richarlison. And you can tell those two guys are ballers. You know, they just the way Rodriguez controlled it, and then Richarlison had a really good first touch and finish. It just showed, and it was something that we were talking about, that those two would probably start up front and how they would sort of jink and play well together. But they just they fed off each other quite well in that particular moment. And it's something that's quite unorthodox in terms of having those two there. And Liverpool just didn't really seem to have a reply. I don't think they're really particularly threatened, and they're very over reliant on Salah to score. And when he doesn't score, they're in a bit of trouble. He's individually scoring a lot of goals this year, but no one else has really scored a lot. I think we covered I think there was 9 players last season that scored 4 or more goals. They had lots of goal threats last year, and Mane hasn't really, and Firmino haven't really got anywhere near their levels of goal scoring. So they just don't seem to have that threat, and they didn't really threaten it at all during the game. Yeah, and it was really good to see Everton as well. They had Calvert-Lewin and Sigurdsson on the bench. So they had depth in options, and that was kind of what made the difference with that second goal. The second goal was quite contentious in terms of the awarding of the penalty. I wanted to get your thoughts on that.
I don't think it was a penalty personally, but I do think that in moments Liverpool looked a lot better. Everton never really looked a lot better than Liverpool. They looked a little bit better most of the time, but when Liverpool did look good, they looked really good. On the balance of it, I do think Everton perhaps deserved to pip the win in a game like this, where Everton haven't won at Anfield in
21 years,
22 years, 22 years. The manner in which the win shouldn't be discussed. I think these penalties and that shouldn't be assessed. And you can talk about even a similar one would be United's penalty they got just about an hour ago against Newcastle. Probably wasn't a penalty, but look, I think the bigger issue now is we talked about when Van Dijk was first injured, they played really well. Things have caught up with them. And I think it's a matter of our Liverpool. This is beyond Van Dijk. I think this is just, it's an absolute it's absolutely disastrous season for Liverpool. And I think they'll recover next season. I think they will. But the fact that, man, this is a talking point for this season. Why do you think Salah's not scoring goals, man? I mean, you take the penalty aside, let's put into focus what like kind of real talking points of the game. Why do you think Liverpool's front three aren't scoring? Because their midfield's not bad, and their front three is the same, and they've even loaned out to Minamino, so they feel they can cope. And Minamino scored today.
Yeah, he scored for Southampton, right? Yeah, it's a very curious decision considering as well that Jota is injured. The decision to put Minamino out on loan with Southampton is a very you wonder if Liverpool might be regretting that slightly because they don't really seem to have. I mean, they've got Origi who's not really playing. Jones is more of an 8 than a forward type player. So it's an interesting decision to send him out alone when you're sort of a bit up and down as they were at the time. Now it's starting to look like a full blown crisis. They lost their last 4 home games. They've lost their last 4 league games. Like it's just things that you wouldn't imagine. Even a month ago, you wouldn't imagine Liverpool would be in this situation.
Yeah.
I feel a bit that the front three's just gotten a bit predictable. They're just trying the same things over and over. They don't seem to be doing things in different ways. And I did speak in the preview before the game. How about just having them in different positions? Firmino played out left with Hoffenheim. Mane played right in Southampton. Salah's really developing into a number 9, doing I've called it several times, the Cristiano Ronaldo evolution from being a wide player to being a number 9. So I don't feel in general, but particularly with that front three, they're sort of just trying the same thing over and over. There is opportunity to just try players in different positions to see what's going on. But I think that their predictability is kind of counting against them a bit.
Okay, so this win for me was quite symbolic in the sense, not symbolic for Everton. There's no changing tides here. Liverpool is still a very, very good team. They're having a terrible season. Symbolic in the sense, to come to my next question, I kind of thought is, will they struggle? Do you, in your gut, think that it will struggle to make the top 4? Or do you think this form will end and they will go to sail on to make the top 4? Because just before you answer that question, sorry, Sham, 3 points. So with all games equal, 3 points behind Chelsea in 5th, 5 points behind West Ham in fourth, excuse me, and then the second and third in United and Leicester, too far away, I think, in 9 points, and City, champions elect. We don't talk about them. So just getting into that 4th place, that's a 5-point deficit with a very, very good West Ham, who had just had a very, very good win against Spurs, which we'll talk about in a second, I guess. But making top 4, is that going to be a struggle for them? Do you personally feel they'll come out of this rut?
I think if they're going to, they kind of need to turn it around now. They've got, their next game is Sheffield United, and they've got then they've got Chelsea, which I think will be a tough game, and then they've got Fulham, and then they've got teams like Wolves and Arsenal and Leeds United, which are winnable games. So they need, if they're going to get there, they need to turn it around now. Their level performance currently is, 4 losses in a row. It's terrible. Let's be honest and let's call it what it is. They can turn it around because they've got the players, but you'd think those next 3 games, if they've got Sheffield United, Chelsea, and Fulham, that they'll need at least 6 points out of those 3 games. If they don't do that, they will fall quite quickly. Even Tottenham were top of the league. Was it a month ago? 6 weeks ago? And Tottenham are now
a bit more than that, but yeah, we do remember.
So that precipice. I was listening to commentary where they were talking about Arsenal taking over, going past Liverpool if they beat City, and it's absolutely ridiculous. Like they're 6th, they could very easily fall to 9th, I think, if they don't turn it around shortly. Tottenham actually played. We'll get into Tottenham, but they played quite well in the second half. They seemed to turn a corner against West Ham, so even they could go on a bit of a run. But if they're going to turn it around, it needs to happen. Like they need to beat Sheffield United. They need to beat Fulham. They need to try and get something against Chelsea. And we spoke before the game. We both felt Liverpool would win, but we did feel there was a certain weight behind the game in terms of the significance. Now that they've lost that game, it seems to take an even more significance on. They couldn't even do it for Klopp, so to speak. They need to be jolted a bit out of their mental state because they are quite brittle.
Yeah, they seem to take a bit of solace in the European, the Champions League, which could go even worse if they don't progress against Red Bull. Which Red Bull's a good side, man. They turned it around against United in the group stage. Just did very well. They lost 4-1 or 5-1, and then gone back to beat them 3-2 and kick them out. I just wanted to point out last thing before we move on from this game. The as of calendar year, most teams have played 9, if not 10 games. Liverpool sit in 17th, man. It never even kind of occurred to me if Southampton go and win 2 games, like one more game, that pushes Liverpool to 18th spot.
Yeah, because Southampton have a game in hand. They're playing on Tuesday against Leeds. So
yeah, and they go with that.
Liverpool at their best. Yeah, it's a home game, I think, as well.
It's not good, man. It's just like, give me a second, Sham.
That's genuinely
So
genuinely dreadful. Yeah, I didn't realize
West Brom,
that bad.
if West Brom, Southampton win their games in hand, blah blah blah. Um, you see, I'd be a little bit scared for Liverpool because next to Sheffield United and Southampton, they have the worst form in the league the last 6 games. They're playing Sheffield next against hungry dogs. You feel almost Liverpool don't have much to play for as the season goes on. Their games become more dead rubber games. I think that's what they call it, dead rubber games, where 3 points here, 1 point there. It almost doesn't matter. It was like United, last season where they'd win 10 games in a row and stay sixth. Um, I'm this very it's very weird position. I find myself talking about Liverpool with this kind of empathy, sympathy, really. And they just have to turn things around as quick as possible. Sheffield United this weekend. We'll do the video later in the week, but they have to turn things around. And I don't know what is the solution because they seem to be stretched. They seem to be just so unlucky. Every single top centre back they have at that club is out. That they started the season with.
To see, yeah. I think Fabinho might be a couple of weeks away still, and he's probably the closest one to coming back. And Henderson's got a groin injury. Groin injuries are not quick turnarounds.
Hamstring, I believe, Sean. No, groin. Sorry, groin. Yeah, it's groin.
I heard groin, then I heard groin and hamstring.
Jesus.
I've heard adductor. That's the word floating around a bit. But you could see with Henderson as well. Like I'd not seen that expression in his face before as he was coming off.
He's a hard man. He's Roy Keane hard. Like he's he can take a punch. So yeah, look. Okay, just to kind of sum up there, as we said before, that leaves Liverpool in a bizarre position of sixth, potentially seventh if they lose to Everton, sitting just above Tottenham and Arsenal, and Everton itself in seventh, who don't mind you have not had good form. Sham. This is a one-off win that probably was based just on grinding it out. They did grind it out. And
so you're talking about Everton, sorry?
Yeah, I was just saying they're not in particularly good form either, but they seem to turn this around. And I just wanted to point out one last thing about the game. It just came to my head again as you said it. They didn't start with Calvert-Lewin and Sigurdsson. Mean to say there was a game plan if you're not starting the two best players against a very good team. So I just props to Ancelotti for
Calvert-Lewin was coming back from injury. So I had pointed out before the game he wasn't going to play 90 minutes. It did surprise me Sigurdsson didn't start, but I think the fact that Sigurdsson's probably, it was either him or Rodriguez. So the fact that they went with Rodriguez showed that they did have, because to play away from home against a team like Liverpool, to play Rodriguez shows, like you said, that there was a plan. They were looking for that moment that he gave them in terms of the way he brought that ball down and quickly. Sometimes when things happen very quickly and efficiently, you can miss it. But the way he did that, and then Richarlison as well, like it was a really good finish. And I did say before the game as well, like whoever scored the first goal in that game, both teams are a little brittle. It was going to go a long way to winning that game. And Liverpool, from the second or third minute, they were just playing catch up.
Absolutely. Let's transition over to what I think was a very exciting game to watch from a United fan point of view, from a neutral point of view. This kind of, for me, brushed Spurs off into oblivion. They're not going to recover at this stage of the season. This was a big game for them. And my boy Jesse Lingard, man, he delivers the goods. I think that's the biggest talking point of this. Before we get into how well Moyes has done, and we've had basically a whole episode talking about this. Let's talk about Justin Lingard. I had a friend in high school named Justin Lingard, Jesse Lingard, who produced the goods, man. He's moved over to London. What I perceive to be gotten away from everything that's held him back, has kind of weighed him down. I think they were all things that are out of his control, and perhaps his parent. I think his mom was quite sick and had relationship issues, and just kind of moved away from that. And he's a man reborn, Lingardinho, they're calling him.
Gardenia, I like that. No, it was really good to see him get on the score sheet, and the goal was pretty good as well. I think it was with his wrong foot, but he lashed it in. And the timing of that in the game, the fact that was the winning goal as well. I mean, but he needed a bit of a fresh start, and I think everybody knew that. Moyes was good enough to take advantage and show a bit of faith in him. Moyes, like as much as Moyes had that United connection, I don't think Lingard actually played under him, so he would have
he didn't.
Had a certain level of faith in Lingard as more as a man than anything else to come across. So that it's I think the fact that he just looks revitalized. Not a fan of the goal celebration. I think he got 2 celebrations in because they ended up looking at it. He did the celebration and then they had to go to VAR. So when it got confirmed again, he went and did another celebration. I think they were pretending to be some rock band or something. It's not my thing.
No. It's a video game called Fortnite, and there's like weird dances in this video game when you kill people. I just wanted to say
Okay.
this about Moyes. So he didn't play under Moyes. You are right. He played. His debut was against Swansea, I believe, for Van Gaal. But if you remember, Ferguson held him in high regard, held Jesse Lingard in high regard, and I guess Moyes would have definitely known about him when he took the job.
They had an eye
Ferguson,
on that team. I think he was part of the FA Cup youth teams that did quite well.
yeah,
I think it was in
yeah, he
Pogba's
was.
class and all that sort of thing.
Shawcross, Pogba, Dean Henderson. No, Dean
Was Michael
Henderson was
Keane
there.
in it as well?
Michael Keane, yeah, Michael Keane was in it. It's a number of really good players were in it, and he was part of that team. But Ferguson always said he would bloom later on. And he's had a couple of dud years, but like, look, if he's gonna do well, he's gonna leave United. Fair enough. If he's gonna do well, come back and play better, even better. He's a nice fella. Like I'd never anything against him.
Well, we always said if he played well, there was a spot for him at United. It's just that you just seem to just need a fresh start. Sometimes people just need that. You just need to walk away, start again from a particular situation. So he's taking advantage of it. I mean, the reality is he's still got 14 games to go and do something. So it could all turn to shit. But he's had a really good start. And a bit like Minamino at Southampton. Just sometimes you just need a new environment and to get settled in. And West Ham, they played really well that first half against Tottenham. They're all over them. And then obviously the second goal came in 2 minutes into the second half.
Yeah,
I did think they sat back a bit and invited Tottenham onto them, and I think that suited Tottenham a fair bit. By the end of the game, Tottenham had Kane, Son, Bale, Moura, and Dele Alli on the field. If they can get those five working together, like on paper, that's a bloody good set of options.
They came very close. They hit the post.
Was a bit isolated on the left. He's probably the best player, but they just had him sitting on the left touchline. I don't think they could have done that a little bit better, I think. But Bale came into it. He played, I mean, it's Gareth Bale, but it's the best I've seen him in a while.
I thought he played very well.
Really could have scored 2 or 3 in another day. Couldn't quite get his chances. I think Son had one that wriggled onto the post in the last minute. Bale had one that smacked against the post from a great pass by Kane. They just couldn't find that. They had a lot of half chances. They didn't quite get the chance that they needed to get into the game. Good goal by Moura, but didn't really make clear-cut chances. It was a lot of half chances. And I thought that Fabianski, is it, in goals? The former Arsenal player? He played quite well, I thought. And they really had to grind out that win. There were signs of improvement in Tottenham. I think if they played like they did in the second half, they'll win a lot more games going towards the end of the season. Sometimes you need to bottom out a bit to come back up. And I think there was a little bit of a bottoming out with Tottenham there. So we'll see how
West Ham, would you believe it, Sham? West Ham, the London club with the in the highest position, pride of London.
Wow, pride of London.
Who would have thought that? You know, and this is the last point about Jesse Lingard, and it's kind of a point about about West Ham as a whole. They've lacked that kind of free-spirited. They've had a history of free-spirited number 10s, dating back to Di Canio in the modern era of the Premier League era, and more recently Dimitri Payet. And I think Jesse Lingard forms into that mold where a bit of a free spirit. You can't really tell him to do, but he does tend to work much harder than the other guys.
Yeah, I don't think he's like the footballer that those two are, but I get what you're saying.
Yeah, and I guess under Moyes, that's as expressive a football is going to be under Moyes. if you get my drift, so he's kind of found the balance. Moyes has done really well to do that.
Yeah.
And look,
if you look at to use that Everton team as an example, that had, so you got guys like Timmy Cahill and Fellaini playing really good football under him, and they're not too dissimilar to Lingard in the sense that they got a bit of flair, but they work their socks off. So I get what you mean. He seems to Moyes doesn't seem to mind expressive personalities, and guys who are a little bit left of center, and he can get the most out of them. So Lingard seems to be one of those guys.
And we said this as well in that video. We did talk about West Ham a lot, and that you don't have to be. You're not a bad manager if you can't manage Man United. You know, one of the biggest club in the world. Blah blah blah. He's shown, man. I mean, besides the Sociedad job, which really did go bad, he did well in his first stint at West Ham, and he left, and then he's come back and he's done really well. In fact, I had a West Ham friend who told me how pissed he was that he wasn't offered the job the first time round. And he was absolutely delighted when they called it back. He liked the structure of the club. He's been given time to put things in place over this last year with lockdown and all that.
To be
So
perfectly honest, whoever went into that United chair after Ferguson was going to have there was a 1 in a million chance that they'd find the next Fergie right after the last Fergie. You know what I mean? Like it was yeah. I don't like saying that it was always going to fail, but Ferguson had such influence over Old Trafford, and then Gill, I think it was, left around the same time. I think there's just
exactly the same time.
much to replace at the club that anyone would have struggled.
Absolutely. So as I said, at least that puts West Ham in fourth. Unbelievable. And Spurs. I mean, Sham, what are we going to say about Spurs these days, man? They're languishing in ninth. They have a manager to match, I believe, who's out of touch, whose siege mentality of running a team, I guess, it's not the way to go anymore. You know, he has maybe two of the best strikers in the world, and he should be doing far better. You can call Son what you want to call Son, but he has two of the best attackers in the world of football. I mean, how many goals have they scored? 37. That's shocking. Considering City has got 50, Man United has got 53, man. United has got 53. And for Arsenal to be languishing in 37 goals and pretty poor goal record as well. Oh, not terrible, 27. You got to ask questions. You know, who's going to take over Tottenham? Was Pochettino sacking a bad idea? I start to ask these questions.
Yeah, know? I think that so sometimes, like Roy Keane often says in his last days at United, he just didn't understand the young players at the club. Like he said that he didn't understand their jokes, he didn't understand the way they did things. Mourinho is kind of a bit like that at Tottenham. You get the feeling that he's trying the same things he tried in 2004, which perhaps worked with those players at Chelsea, but they're not going to quite work with the players at Tottenham. He got a bit stroppy with Ndombele in the first half. Ndombele, he was trying to find a pass and he couldn't find it. And then when he passed the ball off like a square pass, he just sort of, his shoulders sunk. And then Mourinho did a bit of a pantomime on the sidelines, almost like sort of over mocking. Not, I don't want to say mocking, but duplicating or repeating what Ndombele did and say, "Hey, come on." Ndombele also seems to be one of the players that he picks on. There's often a player at the club that he picks on. This, I don't know. Like you look at Tottenham's individual players. You look at guys like Aurier. You look at guys like Dyer. Where's the improvement? These guys are not getting better, and then that's the thing about Tottenham. They were, as much as they've got probably two of the best forwards in world football and Kane and Son. Goals aren't coming from other sources. The midfield and Ndombele is not, I think, not quite the player that Mourinho wants in terms of. He seems to be a tad more physical and a bit less creative than what Mourinho wants. And the defense, the individual players not getting better. I thought Davis and Sanchez actually played quite well yesterday. I don't think overall he's had a particularly good season. And Lloris is like 35, 36, so he's not getting any younger. So you'd want to see that in Tottenham. They're not going to get back up the table unless individual players improve. As well as Bell played, he's only on loan, so he's going to be gone at the end of the season anyway. But you just wonder where the improvement in Tottenham will come from.
I mean, they have a bunch of young players. They have a mix of these old players. Do these Spurs players need to be coached to be better players? I don't know. I think there is an element in there. And is Mourinho the guy to coach players to be better players? I don't think so.
In the presser, he was asked about coaching, and then he said something like, "I think my coaching staff is second to none in the world," or something like that.
Yeah.
He was directly asked that type of question in the press conference, and it was funny because the room was quite darkly lit. I remember when it went to him in the presser, I was there. The room looks really dark.
Yeah.
It was like, and he had a half shadow on his face, and he sort of made that comment. So Mourinho, tactically, as a defensive coach, gets his defenders really sorted out and in right positions. He does tend to err on the side of letting players express themselves in the final third, as opposed to having set ways of moving. Like a Guardiola, you get the feeling that he spends a lot of time with his players in the final third, where they will be and all of that sort of thing. Whereas Mourinho does that more with defensively, but not so much in an attacking sense. And it does mean that while two of his best forwards have telepathic understanding, there's not much going on around them.
I guess it's a very Carlo Ancelotti approach where You get the back five, back six sorted out before going forward. But I mean, look, we have to look at what Spurs are doing now and just start questioning. I don't think he calls for. I think it'd be very unfair to sack any manager this year unless you severely underperformed. I personally feel that's the case. Frank Lampard, I said, was very unfairly sacked, and anyone else would be, including Mourinho. So he shouldn't get the sack. But I think questions should be asked. The board should support him and see how he goes, I guess.
But if you were the Tottenham board, would you go, as Mourinho says, I want another centre back and I want a creative midfielder or whatever he wants? How keen would you be to go and spend that money on him in the offseason?
Well, my thing with this Spurs team is that they entered a new cycle when they perhaps they peaked that Champions League in Rome. No, sorry, it wasn't Rome. Wherever they were against Liverpool. Yeah, they peaked in that, and maybe you can go into a slightly second peak, but they just dropped off and they dropped hard, and nothing was ever really done. That team, nearly that whole team played in that Champions League final.
And how can you say anything was done? It was they did have a lot of injuries that particular season, so it wasn't necessarily their best 11 that made that Champions League final. If that makes sense.
Yeah,
I know that sounds odd, but like Llorente, I think had a fairly important role, and then he left the club, and then Lucas Moura had an important role, particularly sort of scoring that last second goal against Ajax.
Semi-final,
but he's not a starter. He's the guy they go to when the starters are injured. It's
and exactly, and you that Ajax game was kind of, you could kind of look back now and think maybe that Ajax game that Lucas Moura scored was the peak of their powers. That was the absolute most they're ever going to give this kind of 15 to 18 players, but and a team like Liverpool took that, winning the Champions League, and exploded off, where Spurs just couldn't cope with that pressure. And maybe another centre back or another defensive midfield, another kind of winger in Bergwijn, and a Bergwijn replacement would be necessary. But there's no manager in the world that's going to come in with that team and do anything. I promise you that, Sham. There's no Pep.
There needs to be significant. That team has ended its cycle. There needs to be significant investment in that team.
And perhaps Mourinho's
big question is Kane going to be part of that? Is Son going to be part of that?
I think he's done. I think he'll always, he's going to get a lot of hate if he leaves, if and when he leaves. But if I was Kane, I'd start thinking about this. He'd be the same. He'd be the same in 2 or 3 years' time. If United don't win a trophy and Bruno is going like, man, like I give everything, I need to go to win some trophies. It'll be the same thing. It will suck. But I guess United fans won't hate him as much.
Bruno's only been at United for a year, just saying, because you brought this up a couple of times. He's only been there.
Well, it feels like I know. It feels. You just feel like. You just feel like it's inevitable. I in my head it's inevitable, but a couple of trophies.
I don't see Bruno playing out his entire career at an unsuccessful United. I agree. I agree with it. I think,
let's be honest, Sham,
show him something that he's worth.
Let's be honest as well. The Bruno purchase stinks of old United, where United were traditionally a selling club until around the time of Van Persie, maybe Pogba. They've always been they have traditionally sold these rising talents to big clubs, and Van Nistelrooy, Ronaldo, and all that kind of stuff. They've done that in the past before, so wouldn't be surprised if they did it again. And yeah,
United historically bring in players aren't necessarily the finished product and develop them. Like Roy Keane was not the finished product when he came. Ronaldo was not. Rooney was not. They do try and get as much as they can out of those players. Van Nistelrooy, I think, was probably the end of his peak. I'm not going to say past his peak, but he's at the end of his peak when he left. And I think that was driven more by circumstance. I think he had a bit of a falling out with Ronaldo.
That as well. And you could point to Bex as well.
A bit of a one-off because he wanted to go to Madrid. And they got that extra season out of him.
Yeah.
But yeah, United tend to sort of go that way. And particularly sort of under the Glazers. I mean, the reality is, they do tend to sell players towards the end of their peak and not necessarily get all of the peak years out of those guys.
Yeah. Anyways, look, we'll go into the last game, which happened Sunday afternoon. Arsenal versus Man City. Arsenal overall played quite well today. I got to say, but funny enough, Man City got their early goal from Raheem Sterling tapping.
You made the comment, right? Early goal. Yeah.
I say it to be fair, I say it every game. Happens 3 out of every 5 times, so it's not a magic power. It's an inevitability. I mean, look, we want to bring this game up. I think it's worth just saying that these guys are just on a roll, and I don't even fancy West Ham to put a dent in them this weekend. It'll be like a little bug just flitting off, and they'll just take the piss out of West Ham this weekend. I think.
Yeah.
Man City will. Yeah.
I thought Arsenal could have showed a little bit more ambition. They seemed to sort of settle into a groove where they were kind of reacting a bit, and that can happen when you're playing a really good side. City kind of didn't feel the need to necessarily go through the gears. I kind of thought when they goal went in, oh, here we go, 3-0, 4-0, 5-0, it's going to be a proper spanking.
Yeah.
They have done that a few times this year where they've scored a goal in the first 10 to 15 and then you think they're going to run away with it, but they do enough to win. And I felt that they were in proper sort of cruise control. Got the result that they wanted in a job done, right?
I just want to point out, I think Odegaard, I was watching, I thought Odegaard did quite well. He seems to be someone who could fit into this Arsenal team. He liked having the ball at his feet, had kind of good, just generally good passing, nothing too penetrative, but again, very young. He's only 22. I feel like he's been on the scene for about 10 years. His name's been thrown around for so long. But
he was 15 when he went to Madrid, right?
Yeah, that's right. He's a decent player. I thought he looked quite good. And he could be someone who Arsenal do end up making a deal for. On the side of Sterling, you can't really look past Sterling. Was probably their best player.
I was a bit disappointed actually. Smith Rowe didn't really come on. He didn't start the game. I question whether there's an ability for Smith Rowe and Odegaard with Saka. Actually, in theory, that could work as a 3, but then you've got Lacazette, Aubameyang, and Pepe. Yeah. So it's like a 4 position, 6 players. That's not too bad. There are signs with Arsenal on paper. It's a bit like United. Like you kind of look at their team on paper and think, these are individually quite good players. It's just not quite clicking on the pitch.
Yeah.
Considering there's some issues in defence that they need to have a look at.
It's worth thinking. Something about Arsenal worth thinking about is to slowly clear clearing the dead weight. And I think you don't necessarily have to be played bad to be dead weight. Like Ashley Young didn't particularly play bad. In fact, towards the end, when he knew he was going to go to Inter Milan, he started picking up in performances. But it's worth getting rid of dead weight just as a mentality thing. And I just feel this Arsenal team they just feel tired. They don't necessarily look tired. They feel tired. The Bellerines, the Rob Holdings, the El Nini, like something has to kind of.
It's kind of, there's a difference between being sort of an average Premier League pro and being a player who's hungry to continually get better and improve the team. Like a lot of these, when Arsenal had those youngsters come in and they went on that run suddenly, it was just about young guys trying to push themselves and get the best out of themselves.
Yeah.
And you just wondered what exactly was going on, and it just kind of that desire to continue to get better. And like you said, that there is a certain groove of complacency at Arsenal in terms of the playing group.
I'll never understand.
Gotten better over the last 2 to 3 years. It's hard to identify individuals.
And I'll never understand. I guess Bellerin would be an example for me. I don't really pick on him because I think he's a very good player. That he's someone who he's very. I don't know if you know Bellerin on the social scene, but he's very like fashion forward. He owns a couple of fashion brands, and he's very kind of metro. Okay, you do know that, and that I guess looking from outside in, it's like you have about a 10-year, you have about an 8-year period of golden years, as any player does. Maybe you have 3 before, 3 after, where you're sitting on the bench. Why does anything else matter? I will never understand it. You're in a privileged position, blah 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 blah. And when it comes to these players, you just feel some of them can be distracted in the same way that, and I point to United and I point to Liverpool as well. Many of these clubs, Madrid being an example, where you have players just looking at other distractions. Gareth Bale, a great example with his golf.
Michael of that. Yeah.
Lingard, Michael Owen with his horses, famously. Michael Owen said on a pundit show once, about a pre-game show, saying his last 3 years he needed the money and he just hated football, and it's kind of sad. So I just wonder, will what's his name, Mikel Arteta just benefit from identifying these players that just go, like, the club will benefit in the long term. We will lose money in the short term, but the club will benefit in the long term.
You wonder though, like, whether a club like that would want to. So, like, even with United, like guys like Phil Jones still hanging around. Phil Jones, if it does, is about the 25th choice centre back of that club. he's still around. It's interesting on the individual, because there are some individuals like Michael Jordan, for example, pretty much shut everything other than basketball out. And we all sort of assume, to be like Mike, you have to kind of do that. But there are players like Muhammad Ali was obviously, he had a lot of social causes and things that he would openly comment on, and still was a great boxer. Even in the football sense, Dani Alves was kind of like that at Barcelona.
You can point to Rashford now as well.
Yeah, he was quite sort of fashion minded. He was quite made a few sort of stands against racism and things like that. I think they threw bananas at him and he ate one while taking a corner.
I remember that.
Yeah, which I thought was pretty cool. But it depends on the player. Mm-hmm. The point, what it kind of comes down to is you look at guys like Alves, and you look at guys like Rashford is probably a good example as well. There still seems to be a hunger in them to try and get better and be better footballers. Even Alves to go and do what he did at PSG and Juventus, he had nothing to prove after he left Barcelona, and he still went out and try and play at a high level. And you wonder whether guys like Bellerin, he's one example at Arsenal. There are others, not to pick on him, but is he genuinely hungry to get better as a player? Is he genuinely hungry to win stuff at Arsenal? That should be well and above anything else outside football. I mean, even from a pragmatic perspective, it's probably his main income source. So is he pushing himself to be the best footballer that he can be at that club?
And a player like that, something I have thought about as well in the past, a player like him, someone like Juan Mata, Bellerin, they'll never break into the Spanish squad. They'll never, maybe Bellerin will never, actually it's very likely Bellerin will never win a Premier League title. There's this middle ground where I can play at a 6.5 level every week, 6.5 out of 10 every week. You know what I'm trying to say? I'm looking at who scored now over there. It's 5.9 he got. So let's assume these ratings are.
It's the difference between good and great, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, it's good and great. And he's probably thinking, who plays right back for Spain? I think they've gone to 3 or 4, right back, 2 or 3 right backs during the time Bellerin has been a proper pro. And he's probably thinking, I'm never going to play that position. I don't really need to play at a high level or club level. They're not really going to replace me. I'll just tick the boxes, carry on. Yeah. It's a bit shit. It's a bit shit for Arsenal fans.
Yeah, and he's probably similar with someone like Ashley Young, where he was never really going to play a lot of international football for England.
Yeah. And then you look at someone like Tierney. I guess he may never ever play international football. He's got Robertson in front of him, captain of the team, and potentially one of the best left backs in the world. But there's a fight in him. I'll just play my best every week, and I'd love him at United. Honestly, a mentality like him. He has that Bruno Fernandes type. But yeah, look, rant over. They're all Bellerin is a fantastic player. Just something to kind of point out.
And that like as much as you can go, oh, what's Arteta doing? That drive from within the player, he can't put that in a player. He would have been guys on it, but if you have to do that every 2 weeks, I mean, that's down to the player. There's only so much Arteta can do, or any other manager. If Arteta left Arsenal, someone came in. There's only so much that guy can do.
Yeah, absolutely. Players are taking and Frank Lampard will be a great case where player has to take responsibility to some extent. And just to point out, actually, we'll just shift gears a bit. Tuchel calling out Callum. Did you see Hudson-Odoi got subbed on and then subbed off?
I was going to bring that one up. Yeah.
So that was a big point of the weekend.
Body language. I brought up with Ndombele as well. Mourinho had a problem with his body language.
But it's a bit different. Tuchel coming in doing that is kind of like a stepfather giving you a slap.
Yeah.
It's like
a lot. Mourinho has done that before.
But Mourinho won a couple of Champions League before he did that.
Maybe the third season.
He did that to it was very well documented. He did that to Matic one game. I think it was the season they won the league. The second time he won the league with them.
I'm third time. Also, like the Drogba era at Chelsea. Like it was playing Fulham, and he made a double sub 25 minutes in just because he felt the players were probably giving of themselves.
I can tell you who it would have been. It would have been Joe Cole, Paulo Ferreira, Damien Duff. One of those 3.
I think it was actually Cole and Duff. Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah. It was sort of the wide attacking player. It might have been Robban, but it was like those wide attacking players. Yeah.
Yeah. You can just tell who Mourinho hates. Joe Cole does speak very highly of him, though. To be fair, Joe Cole had a hard time under him. I thought.
Joe Cole's a good example of someone who really pushed himself. Like you could almost see in points of his career where, like, he played for West Ham in the Championship as a centre midfielder and did really well. But people were sort of still questioning that hunger and desire to get better. And he went and found that. Like, it wasn't necessarily innate in him. Joe Cole's a very talented player. And he was probably Joe Cole.
Joe Cole was baller, man.
Yeah, he was a really good player. Probably the closest to Gascoigne, between Gascoigne and Rooney, he was probably the closest to being that
Yeah,
type
it's
of
fair. Yeah,
and
perhaps a
all of
great.
England, like if you look at any England player, even Joe Cole, like they asked me who's your favorite players like Gascoigne, like that whole
Yeah,
generation, he was the man for those
yeah,
guys,
yeah.
and you could tell that he found something in himself. So maybe he respects the fact that Mourinho sort of helped get that out of him. And we talked a bit about Arteta perhaps struggling with that with Arsenal. So there is a certain amount that a manager can do, but it does
Mm-hmm.
come down to the player, and
Mm,
maybe sometimes someone needs a bit of a shake to get it out of them. But
yeah.
Joe Cole, maybe he and Mourinho won't have 5, 10, 15-year reunions about winning the title, but he always have that sort of respect for Mourinho, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, I think it was a good weekend. Look, it was a good weekend for United. A great weekend for City. City are just sitting there waiting for teams to drop off so they can win it early, so they can really go for the Champions League this year. That's pretty obvious, and they'd be thinking about the League Cup in, I believe that's mid-April. I have to go check the date on that one.
Yeah, sort of
But
endish. Yeah.
yeah, and I can't believe this, but Spurs could win a trophy this season as well. You can just imagine Kane holding the trophy like the way Jordan did when he won his first NBA title, crying to the trophy. But look, the table stands. Not much has changed at the top. City, Man City, United, Leicester, West Ham in fourth, Chelsea fifth, Liverpool, and at the bottom again, not much has changed. Newcastle just languishing there. You know, very dangerous position. Fulham, West Brom, Sheffield. I think.
4 or 1. So there's not much movement there. Chelsea and Liverpool have obviously dropped points, so there's a bit of a split there. That top four is starting to kick on a bit. I think it's more of a top 3 than a top 4. I think West Ham's still probably slightly off. So, but you tend to think bar any sort of major drop off from United and Leicester, they're probably both fighting for second.
And I just want to point this out before we go. Sheffield United have a very interesting next 8 games or so. I'll just list them out for you before we go. They have Liverpool, Villa, Southampton, Leicester, Chelsea, Leeds, Arsenal, Wolves. It's tough.
That's 8 of the top 11. Yeah.
Take Chelsea out because that's the quarterfinals of the FA Cup, which I know that it's pretty obvious they're going to sacrifice that. But if they go win 3 of those games, perhaps get a draw out of one of them, we could be seeing something different, man. Could be seeing a Sheffield that could,
they're 14 points from safety.
I understand. I do understand that it is a miracle that would take this at this stage. But I was just putting it out there.
Well, great.
Something not to sleep on.
Great opportunity. So I know what you mean.
Yeah. There's something to think about. Any closing thoughts, Sham?
No, I was going to actually touch on Hudson-Odoi, but I think it was interesting. It's not a good sign when you're under a new manager and you're brought off after 25 minutes. That's not a good sign at all. And Tuchel's he's been very good actually in just saying, you all start from scratch again. So, and he's given Hudson-Odoi chances that I don't think Lampard necessarily gave. So it's not the best result for Hudson-Odoi to be taken off that way. Keep an eye on that one. See if something comes out of it.
And look, a couple of choice games. We're putting a video out on Friday. Man City, West Ham, Leicester, Arsenal, Chelsea, United, Liverpool, Sheffield, Everton, Southampton. Some great cracking games next over the course of this weekend, which we'll get to. And obviously Champions League and Europa League in the middle, chunk in the middle this weekend. So this week. As always,
that would be very interesting. I think it's the one that catches the eye, not because of the stature of the two teams. I just think both of the teams are in very interesting moments.
Yeah, interesting moments. Always a pleasure, Sham. As you begin your day in Perth, 6 a.m. over there. Thanks so much for watching, guys. We are the 5 Pass podcast. My name is Suddy. This is Sham. As always, keep football simple. And as always,
keep passing, guys. Cheers.